G'day, listeners. Today we're joined by Jordan Woodhams. He's a fellow political podcaster in Australia. We're going to chat about the corruption in Brazil, Australia's defence policies, or I guess lack of them. Oh, we'll see.
What about Barnaby?
He might come up today. He might. That's usual.
Thanks so much. Glad to
Jordan,
be
really
here.
looking forward to it. G'day, listeners. Welcome to My First Party, the podcast where we meet people at the grassroots changing politics, especially in Australia. We're coming to you live from the Hanging Gardens at Brunswick. My name's Owen Miller. I'm a candidate for the Fusion Party. With us, as usual, Brunswick's favourite bullshit detector, Peter Cargianis.
Hello.
So, Jordan, I'm excited. It's not much has happened this week. We can finally get back to chatting about Brunswick policies. It's going to be a fantastic start. But,
Well, that's good because I am all over Brunswick policies, so let's do it.
Well, actually, one thing I wanted to bring up first of all, I really wanted to chat about. I think there's a point where the Libertarians could be proven wrong about something.
Well, nothing else is happening in over the last week.
Is there something more urgent that we should discuss?
Well, probably, and I'm sure Jordan, probably have a view on this. And I don't want to go into the intricacies of what happened, because I think everyone's seen the video of what's happened in Minneapolis overnight, last couple of the shooting.
Yeah.
But I think it's more a point that the mainstream media and even the main sort of politicians at the top echelon, Trump, etc., JD Vance, have given one narrative, and it's the fact that sort of the people are giving us the other narrative that we're able to see it. So I think that's probably the key takeaway for me.
Yeah.
That we're able to actually have a different perspective just because of the fact that we as people and politicize and are able to give us a different perspective. Otherwise, we'll just be having views based on our, I guess, inherent political bias as to do we believe the government or not, if it wasn't for that.
Well, I guess, would people just toe the party line, their favourite party? Would they live in a field?
It still is to some extent, but that's a little bit kicked around by the mainstream media, I think.
Are you guys talking about the shooting the police car with the ICE vehicle?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And I feel the same way. And I'm so grateful that we live in this day and age where we've got citizen journalists like us who will report that stuff and give the other side. Once upon a time, you only had one mainstream narrative. These days, people complain that we're all divided and everyone's got, their own echo chamber and their own perspective. But I see it as a good thing. There's trade-offs with everything. But at the end of the day, now we've got more perspectives and we just got to trust people that they're able to discern the truth for themselves. And I'm all for it.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say, but that also leads us to the other big thing that's happening at the moment. And obviously, Albanese has announced the Royal Commission into anti-Semitism. And again, I think as a society, we need to, I'm totally in favour for, fighting hate and hate speech wherever it is, but it shouldn't come at the cost of democracy either. And I think that's the thing that at the moment we need to be vigilant about as well. And I mean, freedom of speech and so forth as well, and what cost, because what they're proposing and the terms of reference of that Royal Commission could have major serious implications as well. And also the issue about, do you have a foreign government having interference into our sovereign country as well? Yeah, because Israel has had some influence of what's been going on as well. And if I can even say that right now before it becomes an issue in itself.
That's right. Jordan, did you hear for the police investigation into the Bondi shootings? Yeah, I heard Mossad, they were offering to get involved, or I think they are getting involved. I guess, one side of me thinks, like, isn't it great? They're going to be helpful. But then I guess also, like, why can't our police, like, why can't they do a good job themselves? And, if they need help, why is it Mossad? Why isn't it ASIO?
Well, look, I didn't realize that Mossad had offered to help the Australian police conduct an investigation, but that immediately strikes me as quite strange and unnecessary. We've got our own agencies, the police. I mean, this is a police matter. I'm not even sure why you need ASIO to investigate it. Apart from that, it's such a serious matter. We often like the political optics of having a serious organization, such as our version of the CIA, get involved. But reality, this was a mass shooting. Police deal with crimes like this. We're talking about an investigation where they're going to prove the obvious guilt of some obviously guilty people. It seems like the investigation is kind of straightforward. The Royal Commission, on the other hand, where Anthony Albanese has selected someone who is pretty clearly in his camp, so to speak. I mean, we could unpack that a bit more, but I think most people know off the bat that this person is already pre-selected to come up with the answers that Anthony Albanese is going to be happy to put forward. So it doesn't seem like a real investigation or a real royal commission into why this event happened. It seems like it seems like
actually,
end.
Jordan, did you hear anything? I don't know what the terms of reference are going to be. Like, you know, when they say royal commission, into what exactly? Did you hear, Peter? Did you hear what?
Well, again, there's even criticisms about who is appointed, because there are those who actually didn't want to, because they're actually saying she's not going to go to the lengths that they wanted, because they wanted it even narrower. So yeah, I think the terms of reference of what they're going to be investigating are going to be, because look, let's be honest, you know, even if it's, again, I haven't done any of the investigations, but if those shooters are, as they say, ISIS
They had a
back,
flag.
yeah, no, I'm saying I'm not. Again, we're not putting anyone on trial here. I'm saying if they are, it's like saying, you know, linking them to the collective Islam backing is like saying the Ku Klux Klan are linked to Christianity. Like it's like there's a bit of Islamophobia going on as well, right? So the terms of reference have to be quite specific about, okay, what's responsible about the Bondi shooting, then anti-Semitism, and then are you going to conflate the whole of Israel issue as well? And us as a society, can we be critical of any other foreign government's policies? And what does that do about our own democracy and civil liberties?
Do you guys find it curious that Anthony Albanese, and I'll just say the mainstream media as a collective, often are now talking, well, not now talking, as if they haven't already been talking, but they're framing the Bondi shooting as an anti-Semitism issue. I mean, it is anti-Semitic because the guys that wanted to conduct this mass murder were specifically targeting Jewish people. But when I hear the word anti-Semitism, I'm thinking of Nazis, neo-Nazis, people who, I'm thinking of skinheads, where this doesn't, well, I mean, it wasn't skinheads, it was Islamists. It was a guy who was a scholar of Islam. He had an ISIS flag in the car. He'd been over to the Philippines, which is not predominantly Muslim, I don't believe, but has a strong Muslim population. I mean, this is clearly ideologically focused. It was due to the Islamic belief, and yet he hasn't mentioned the word Islamic once. Correction. I think he has mentioned the word Islam once in all of his interviews since the actual attack. And I saw that
well, that was the point I was trying to make, probably unsuccessfully, that, again, the fact that they have some sort of ISIS sort of backing or in their philosophies is like saying if someone did something from the Ku Klux Klan, you'd indict every single Christian. Now, it has to be quite specific about, okay, if you're only going to investigate what happened with the Bondi and who these people are, then, okay, do it. But if you want to then say, okay, what's going on? Is there an increase in anti-Semitism in Australia? What's it responsible for? Then you have to also then bring into the fact that what's going on globally and what's happening, is that responsible, contributing to it as well as part of the dialogue about it. But to then conflate as a penalty, if you like, as far as restricting our freedom of speech, to say, well, we can't speak about a foreign government's policies and conflate that with anti-Semitism. There are enough Jewish lobbies groups in Australia who also say that's a danger in itself, because you are watering down, you know, the protection of Jewish people and increasing anti-Semitism by conflating it with the policies of a state, being Israel in this instance.
Yeah, but actually, yeah, Jordan, to your point about it being, how they love the term anti-Semitic, and I guess I would disagree with you slightly. I do agree with the government that, you know, it pretty clearly fits a definition of anti-Semitism.
Whose definition, though?
Well,
whose definition?
If they're killing Jews, how could
No. The terms, no, you said you agree with the Australian government, right? But again, the terms of reference about what they're going to investigate is going to be critical, because there is a terms of reference and definition.
But this isn't just the Royal Commission. I'm saying, so Jordan, I agree with your point that, you know, this would more clearly fit into the bucket of Islamic terrorism. So yes, although the term anti-Semitic is correct, like, is that the most applicable thing to describe the phenomenon? Yeah. And I guess, like, partly why they're choosing the term anti-Semitism is it fits into this narrative that right-wing extremists are the biggest threat in Australia at the moment.
Yeah.
And actually, on that point, I don't.
Sorry, just to add to the point, the lady is responsible for the document that was drafted, commissioned by Albanese ahead of.
Okay.
What was her name? Do you recall?
Virginia Bell.
Jessica Albanese.
No. Sorry.
Sorry, you're talking about the Royal Commission part?
No, pre the paper that was looking into the recommendations that she put out as far as for universities that may lose their funding and so forth.
Oh, about is this in Australia?
Yeah, yeah.
Universities had to toe the party line.
Yeah,
I don't remember this.
Yes, we spoke about it.
Oh, Julian Seagull.
Yeah, Seagulls.
Yeah.
Now, she was asked why she didn't actually come out and condemn the Nazi Party's march through Sydney.
That's right.
So forth. And then they also brought it to the fact that her partner actually sponsored, I think it was the Advance
Australia, yeah,
and so forth. So, and she said, in hindsight, yes, I probably should have spoken out at the time when the neo-Nazi party protested. And yet all they wanted to do, and to answer your point about this, they wanted to also conflate why they're linking the, I guess the Bondi shooting to the broader Islamic issue is because they want to link it to the pro-Palestine protests, which for the most part, you had, hundreds of thousands of people marching peacefully, even in the rain, right? And as they do in Melbourne as well, again, to say we don't like what we're seeing there, okay? Similarly to the discussion we had about what happened in Minnesota, we're seeing the footages. The media can tell us something different, but people are seeing what they're seeing, and their consciousness is saying we don't like what we're seeing. So they want to conflate it to that, which then gives the government, like they've done in New South Wales, brought in laws to say you cannot protest.
Yeah.
And they're going to bring it here and elsewhere, right? So they're bringing different laws.
Yeah, they did in Sydney, yeah.
So this is where they're conflating it to say why they're expanding it, to say, well, yes, it's linked to broader protests against this, and which then goes back to my point. How much does an influence of a foreign national government, it's like Israel, to say, well, if you criticize us, even if you think it's wrong,
that's anti-Semitism.
It's anti-Semitism. So you cannot. So their policies is influencing us as a sovereign nation.
Is it possible to criticize Israel without being called anti-Semitic, or rather without actually being anti-Semitic?
Well, yes, unless only if Israel by itself then defines itself as an apartheid state, saying we are a pure Jewish nation, and anyone here isn't Jewish. So therefore, if you're criticizing by logic the nation state of Israel, which is all inclusive, right? Then you are criticizing the policy of the government and what they're doing. If they are, on the other hand, say, if you're criticizing us, you're anti-Semitic, that by definition means you are excluding anyone that is not Jewish. Therefore, you are publicly then declaring that you are what you're being criticized for.
Yeah. And they regularly jump to the defense of, did they say multicultural? Well, multi-ethnic, actually. Isn't
Correct. But therefore, I'm not just criticizing the Jews in that state. I'm criticizing everyone who declares themselves, I hold a Jewish passport. You can't have it both ways. So and that's why I said before, there are plenty of Jewish groups that say what you're doing is actually contributing to anti-Semitism because you're eroding what it means to be Jewish.
Yeah. Nobody is better at getting people offside with the Jewish nation than the Jewish nation.
Because it's different. The whole Zionist component versus the Jewish ethnicity and label is quite different, but they've chosen to conflate them.
Yeah.
Actually, Jordan, backing up a bit, when we were discussing before about, the right-wing extremists, how they're, ASIO says they're the biggest threat to Australia. Do you happen to know, all the neo-Nazis, they seem to be gaining strength in Australia, but, obviously I don't tune into their stuff. Do they, I never heard anything that like current neo-Nazis, are they saying anything about Jews? I thought it's more about just immigration. I didn't think Jews were a real problem for them.
I guess they kind of go hand in hand. I mean, like, if you're a proper neo-Nazi, then you're always going to sort of hate the Jews or just hate anybody generally. But I think at the moment, the neo-Nazis, and, it could be totally off topic because same as you, I don't really follow them. I think generally they're complaining about immigration, which... and part of that could be a strategy because the rest of the nation, Australia and the world, I guess, is complaining about mass immigration right now. It seems to be the number one topic, which is why we've seen yesterday, One Nation is now equal on par with the LNP. See that? We're polling at 23%.
Oh, yeah. I'll put up a graphic on, recording now about the stats. But yeah, like What was it showing? Yeah, something like
Yeah,
22.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
One
Yeah, so
Nation,
the
yeah.
LNP and One Nation are both polling at 23%. ALP
Yeah.
is at 29%.
Yeah.
But in a
Well,
head-to-head race
yeah.
between ALP and LNP, LNP is at 48, ALP is at 52. But in a head-to-head One Nation against ALP, it's 50-50, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been saying it now for a while that, post the last federal election, where effectively, Fox News demonstrated that they were worthless in the community as far as pushing a candidate. They needed a new poster boy, and that's where our number one lover boy Barnaby's come into the fray now, because he's going to be the new Farage. So they needed him to be the new Farage for Australia. He's already got a brand. They just needed to put him in a new suit. And to now start advocating that, I bleed for Australia cause. He will. That's going to be the new cause. So, Pauline will basically push to the side and he'll take over. He'll be the new voice, and Fox will just promote the shit out of him next.
Yeah. Well, I met Pauline Hanson during the last federal election and did like a quick 60-second interview with her. And I had a lot of friends who are, I would say, either left or far left. And, they asked me about, what she really like in person.
Smell as good as she looks.
She's a lot older than you might think. Like, she was tired, was the way that I describe her.
Is 96 when she got in, wasn't it?
Sorry, you're saying what was a 60-second conversation about?
The 60. So during the run up to the federal election, I just did a bunch of 10 questions in 60-second videos. So I'd go and find a candidate, hit them with 10 questions, rapid fire, and then just to sort of cut out the fluff. Because normally when you ask a politician a direct question, which is like a dichotomy, they'll waffle on and carry on about a bunch of other stuff. So I just set the tone and set the premises. You got 60 seconds to hit these 10 questions. And that way you get an actual answer on where they stand on Israel or where they stand on free speech, castle law, whatever it might be. So I just hit it with that. Yeah.
Any gems?
I can't remember what her answers were now. It was maybe 6 months ago, but it's on my YouTube and Instagram. But I guess the takeaway lesson that I got from it is that she's tired. And you can see that because, prior to a couple of months ago, it was Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party. So it was 4 letters. Now it's One Nation Party. So I was telling people after I met her, I think this is her last election. And I guess this coming election will have to be her last election because...
Barnaby, like I said, as soon as that happened, I was like, they need a poster boy. And he made he fits everything. So he's just creepy.
Being likable.
Well, no, apart from the aesthetics, clearly, and like I said earlier to Owen, he's a family man. He likes multiples. So he'll start them anywhere. So yeah.
I don't know why parties choose unattractive candidates. They need a couple of fellas as good looking as yourselves. I mean, how was the last LNP choice? What was his name? Not Scott Morrison, the guy after him. It looked like a thumb. Someone had drawn a face on a thumb.
Turnbull was a bit of a silver fox, wasn't he? Yeah.
No, the bald guy that came after Scott.
Oh, Peter Dutton, yeah.
Yeah, he was just horrible.
Well, do you remember? I think it was the Herald Sun. I can't remember which newspaper had him a couple of when he first ran during COVID or first got it, and they interviewed his wife. And the headline was, "He's no monster." That was the best caption, the best thing she could have said. He's no monster.
Glowing endorsement.
Yeah, she could have said something like he fucks like anything, like something.
Yeah, plenty of. Actually, one of the things, John, I was so disappointed seeing those polls. I mean, sure enough that people are, finally losing faith in Liberal Labor. I was so disheartened though. The other category, which Fusion and Libertarians both fall into, that had dropped. I saw from 15 to 13%. So
I know it's so disappointing to see the rest of the country. Yes, there's hope for the nation. They've stopped buying into the uni party. That's one thing that I'm adamant about. Whenever I do one of my YouTube videos, at the end I always include which party's for this or which party's against that, and I never include the LNP, ALP because to me, they are the same party, so I don't want to promote them. I think it's pointless to talk about them. The other thing is that people use them as sort of a proxy to quickly figure out which team they're on. They'll look for the rebel.
Yeah, exactly.
People, I guess I'm on that side. So
yeah, against Jordan change transformation. Because the mustache is gone, and so we need better looking candidates. No, so maybe that's the next pivot.
What do you reckon, Peter? Should I grow back the mustache before the next election?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll have a look at some photos.
Okay.
But But back to, but where will the Greens fall into this? Because clearly they're part of the other.
No.
Yeah, they were on the chart. They were declining slightly, I think. Were they? I don't remember.
Greens declined. They were at 16%, and now they're down to 13%. So they lost 3 points.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Because they don't come and talk to us anymore.
No, I thought you guys would be
are-
friendly. I thought the Fusion Party would have some common ground with the Greens Party.
We have a lot of overlap, but one of the points we don't agree on. John, have you got the same reaction, by the way? If we have the wrong person on our podcast, we get cancelled. Our last video with the guy about the paid protesting, that was easily our best rating video so far. But then we get a whole bunch of downvotes and like people saying shit about paid protesting, and I guess my message to viewers is anybody who comes on this podcast, like Oscar, we got a lot of criticism. Oscar Yield is the local councillor. When he came on, it wasn't the We Love Oscar, the Oscar Fan Club podcast.
So the Greens have cancelled us.
Yeah, I find that as well. And during the election or the run up to the last federal election, when I was doing these little interviews and whatnot, it was easiest to go and speak to quote unquote right wing. Not that I particularly like the right-left dichotomy, but it's a simple way to explain it. The right-leaning parties were happy to talk to you and didn't require much sort of preface to the questions, whereas Greens, left-side candidates almost couldn't get any interviews. And the interviews that I did get were, God, they wanted to monitor the questions or change the questions, whatever it might be.
Yeah,
I'm like, these are the same 10 questions that I just gave to those 3 people over there.
As I said to one of the guys, Owen has told me I need to call in the guy at the party we had New Year's Eve, because he was saying that he was trying to educate me and sort of
we shouldn't have these people on
because we monetize them and we blah blah blah. And I said, look, I totally understand. And after I sort of asked him, how does that little spiel he gives at parties work for him in these moments?
Yeah.
And I said, I totally understand all that, but I said, why we do this is to have engagement and dialogue and so forth. I said, but what you're advocating is like people just stick to their echo chambers. And I said, and the fact that this is why we've landed where we are right now. And the fact is, LNP and Labor have set up the electoral system where it's now going to become even harder for independents to get in and have a voice. So exactly what you're advocating to continue is going to lead us down a path where what you want will never find a voice.
Yeah. Why do you guys think that they are so concerned with controlling the narrative that they'll either won't talk to you or they'll deplatform you if you talk to someone who's not on the right team?
No, because I think ultimately the individuals that are attracted there don't have the ability to have their own curiosity and ideas. So no, this is my view. This is my view, so I'll express it. This is ex-former Green here, I think.
Really?
So the fact that they all spill the same voice and opinion, like there's this own little orthodoxy, this shade of green orthodoxy, that they don't spill anything else. And the fact that they won't even engage on a topic, for me, it just validated that. So there's no dialogue. They don't want a dialogue.
And it sucks because it means that someone like myself, who's genuinely curious, doesn't get to hear the other point of view. I don't get to hear the other side. The only time I get to hear it is just in private conversation with my quote unquote lefty friends.
But yeah, I think it's not a strategy that's working out. It reminds me a lot of the US Democrats. Remember in the lead up to the presidential election last time, how many months did it go on where they were just lying to the people? Like, Joe Biden doesn't have dementia. He's fine. Oh,
sharp as a tack, they said.
And then, it's same with once Kamala Harris came in, they had that thing of everything was still being so very scripted. They would have an interview, and that's right, Donald Trump was suing the media company because they edited the interview so heavily in Kamala's favor. But I guess, my reaction is that Trump won because people hated the Democrats so much. It would, sure, many people, their criticisms of Trump were saying, he's a sexist, he's racist. That's not why people are voting for him, though. So that doesn't matter. They were voting for him because he pissed off the Democrats who they had.
Well, that, and he just told them what the Democrats wouldn't tell them anymore. So he basically told the people what they wanted to hear while delivering to those that he needed to what they wanted.
Yeah,
there's two ways. There's two areas of the Trump administration: deliver to those that have what they want and tell the people what they want to hear, without having to give anything.
Actually, speaking,
and the Democrats didn't do anything. There is no Democratic Party anymore.
Actually,
it's not at that level.
Thinking more about what people want to hear, Jordan, can we get back up to Australian politics for a bit?
Oh, we're going to Brunswick.
This might be relevant to Brunswick. Okay, so you're telling people what they want to hear. One of the Libertarian big talking points is no tax increases. You guys would never vote for any tax increases. I want to challenge you on this. Okay,
go for it.
At Prosper Australia, for instance, they have this slogan that if we pay the wrong taxes, then we end up paying more taxes, which I guess some people would end up paying more. And so if we were to think, for instance, so in Fusion's housing policy, so we're advocates of land tax as proposed by Henry George. At the moment, Victoria, for instance, has quote unquote land tax, but owner occupiers are exempt. And so part of Fusion's policy is that everybody would have to pay land tax.
Okay.
Some land's too cheap that it's not worth it. But anyway, in these scenarios, I guess, if Fusion is going to say like owner occupiers now have to pay land tax, I guess the Libertarians would say that's a new tax. We're going to vote no. But then, would you agree with the principle though? Like, if we have the wrong tax system, if we need some new taxes and deleting some old taxes, isn't your policy of no new taxes just, going to block good progress?
Well, I wouldn't call it progress. I wouldn't call it good either. I would be 100% opposed to a land tax. So correct me if I'm wrong, but a land tax is where you assess the value of land, and then each year you pay tax on that land, which essentially sounds like rent. Correct me, is that wrong?
So it's the land before improvement. So like if you build a house there, you don't get taxed on, how great your house is.
Just the land. Yep. Yeah. So in that sense, you can never really own your house. So you could buy it when you're 20 and still be paying for it every year for the rest of your life, even until retirement. Now, I understand the economic argument for that is that people on large pieces of land would be encouraged through taxation to downsize, pass that land on. Perhaps it becomes less productive, and therefore somebody else can make better use of it. That's the argument for land taxes.
Exactly.
I would still be opposed to it. I think that you are taking, one, because you can never own your house. I think that's probably the best argument against it, because when I want to own something, I want to truly own it. I don't want to be renting it from the government forever. So that would probably be my first and strongest argument against a land tax. But does that answer your question?
I think if I can sort of interject in that point, so if we can move away from the argument of land tax, which I agree with what you're saying.
Yep.
So I don't have any issue with your point. So if we can maybe use the discussion of land tax as a discussion point and focus on the principle.
Well, because this is just an example, Jordan.
You've got two parts to your question. Obviously, the land tax part, and then the overarching question, which is whether I as a Libertarian or we as the Libertarian Party would be opposed to new taxes, whether they be land tax or something else. Land tax was just your example, right? As a general principle, which is something that I know that the Fusion Party talks about on your website, is that you have values or rather you've got values and principles, and you have principles so that when a new law comes up for suggestion, you can indicate to people prior to the actual specific law coming out which way you would fall on that issue. And our principle is that, we don't say taxation is theft. It's a pretty hardline libertarian line, though a lot of us feel like that. And I would love if you guys or anybody else could actually describe to me a situation in which tax doesn't look like theft. Now, it's not something that I'm pushing for or going hard on, saying that taxation is theft. I recognize that I'm going to have to make some concessions. I would allow some taxes, but I can't think of any taxes that I would want to keep. I mean, income tax seems like the best and easiest one to use. Totally opposed to capital gains tax, which is probably a bit of an edgier position compared to every other party, because I see that is just the same dollar that I've earned going into a share. That share grows, and then I get a profit out of it. I'm not really sure how the government is able to justify that, because it's taxing the same dollar twice, but I guess they don't need to justify it. They just get to take it. So if you can find me an example where the tax doesn't take something away from people without their consent, then I'll be all for it.
Well, I guess goods and services tax, for instance, it's I guess since it's so tied up in that particular transaction itself,
Yeah.
Especially like what if you're buying something from the government?
Mm.
Can I ask? So I don't have an issue with the principle of what you're saying.
Yep.
How would you guys, I guess, pay for social services?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, let me touch on two things. How would we go about paying for social services, and the value added tax that Owen just brought up? The value added tax is probably one of the quote unquote better taxes in my mind, because one of the things you can do with it as a citizen is not buy stuff. And if you want to reduce the government's revenue, you can stop participating and therefore you're no longer paying taxes. That's going to hurt them and hurt their budget. And you can have a direct impact on that budget every time you choose to or choose not to purchase something. So a value added tax is probably one of the taxes that I would be okay with keeping. The way I guess I still don't like it.
Which then goes back to my question.
Yeah, the second part. Sorry.
As a government / society.
Yeah. How do we pay for things? I think realistically, it's one of the places that I'll have to make a concession. So our policy is a 20% flat tax across the board, with a one-step increment of a tax-free threshold of $50,000. I'd be happy to make that $100,000 or whatever it might be. But that would be on your income. So income tax would be the answer to your question. And then other than that, oh yeah.
All right. So again, it's not a matter of no tax or tax. It's a matter of policy and how we apply the taxation system, what equity exists in society. Because at the moment, it's definitely skewed, and those who particularly have benefit significantly from it, including the taxation system, with housing and so forth, how it is now. It's a welfare state effectively for those who have the taxation system in many instances. Negative gearing, for instance.
Oh, sorry to cut you off.
I'm saying with negative gearing, the way it's set up at the moment, it is welfare for those who have the tax system that funds their wealth.
One of the things you often hear is, this new tax cut is a tax cut for the rich. The thing is that every tax cut is a tax cut for the rich, because you can't cut taxes on the poor. The poor aren't paying any taxes.
So I guess what I was saying is that it isn't, from what I heard, it wasn't a matter of, tax or no tax. It's a matter of then what policy do we apply as, for instance, government society, to make sure that it's equitable and just. And I was just giving the example of, say, negative gearing, where at the moment it is very unjust and not equitable. So I wasn't sort of trying to create new policy, because that's what the policy has to be, to say, in order to then have a just society, one, we need to get rid of negative gearing. That'll give us more money in the coffers to then apply it to, for instance, let's say a 20% tax board across, for everyone, et cetera, whatever the new policy will be.
Well, look, negative gearing could be considered. I mean, you'd have to speak to an economist. I mean, I've studied economics, but I'm not an economist. Negative gearing could be seen as a subsidy, and taxes and subsidies are the same thing.
It is a subsidy. It is a subsidy. Subsidy for working tax.
For landlords,
subsidy. So, and you use it to basically, you get welfare from the tax system to subsidize your debt. You claim it as a deduction.
Well,
sorry, go on, Jordan.
At least when you talk to somebody who hasn't studied economics, if you say to them that the government is giving out a subsidy, what they hear is the government is giving out money, and that's what a subsidy is to them. A tax cut, or rather not paying taxes, doesn't sound to the layperson like a subsidy. So in that sense, I'm not sure that I agree that that the negative gearing is a subsidy. But
sorry, you used the word subsidy, so I was just
fair,
agreeing with the term. I don't want to get caught in the I guess semantics, because everyone's about anti-semantics at the moment. So
that's my fault. Yeah. Look, the question about negative gearing. Do I think we should get rid of it? I asked actually this question to the Libertarian Party just the other week, saying that if we voted to scrap negative gearing in order to help the housing situation, would that be voting for an increase in taxes? And therefore, would we be able to stand by our previous statement, which is that we've never voted for a tax increase? They said, no, we couldn't vote to get rid of it if we wanted to stand by that statement of we've never voted for a tax increase. However, I would be okay with getting rid of it, I guess, in principle, because I see it as a subsidy. And as a libertarian, I'm opposed to taxes and subsidies of all kinds. Does that answer the question sufficiently?
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, yeah, no, yeah, I had an issue with the first response, but yeah, I understand what you're saying because I agree with that. Because
Right.
yeah, if principles get in the way of the outcome that's sought, then the principle has to be reevaluated. Like values, what we value changes, so hence our values change as well. So if you can't be dogmatic on something if the outcome that one seek isn't achieved just because you're dogmatic on a principle.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I actually disagree with you slightly on that. I'm a bit more of a deontological type of person. I prefer to follow the
Same.
principle.
That's what my logic was.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
then I don't disagree. I 100% agree with you.
Okay. But actually, so Jordan, I gather when you're saying, for instance, taxation is theft, I guess, I'd say it's like the fee to enter society sort of thing. But I guess the hardcore libertarians, so to Peter's question before, how do you pay for anything? I guess the main expense I see as well is militaries. And so especially when sovereign citizens come up, especially like if in continental Australia, and even to some extent New Zealand, like all the money that Australia spends on its military, sovereign citizens, if they're saying like, I don't want to be part of Australia, I just want to be left in peace, leave me alone, like at the end of the day, they're not chipping in for the defense that Australia's spending on our military, and New Zealand and all these sovereign citizens get this defense for free. And so I wonder, like if you guys are so reluctant to
pay for
tax
stuff.
anybody, then how are you going to pay for a military? Are we just going to get invaded, a year after we create this libertarian paradise?
Well, I guess that's the difference between libertarians and anarchists, is that libertarians recognize that government is a necessary evil. Militaries, firefighters, police, courts, these things fall under public goods. They're non-excludable and non-rivalrous. And so these are things that every country does fund and you need to fund. What you're talking about there is the free rider problem, whereby some people are not chipping in, and there's no real way to solve it. Other than implying a flat tax across the board with no exemptions. Even the guy that only earns $10 a year, he has to pay his 20%, so he loses $2 and is down to $8. Obviously, that's not a position that I would take. That's why I'm a libertarian, not an anarchist.
Yeah.
What would happen though if and you may have answered this and I may have missed it, but I'll ask it. If we've got this libertarian paradise, the economic system's in, and we have a Trump situation where he says, no, I need GDP increased for military spend to 7%.
Yeah.
Too bad. The government doesn't get to dictate, when GDP increases. I know that macroeconomics and modern economists like to think that the government is actually there to direct and orchestrate the economy and influence people's lives. But we are talking about individuals' lives. GDP, the president often gets way too much credit for whether the GDP goes up or down and whether the economy is doing well or poorly. The reality is that these things would come or go regardless of whether it was Trump, JD Vance,
Yeah,
Kamala
I
Harris.
totally get that. I have no disagreement with you about the world economics and how it kind of operates. My question was quite specific about military spend, which could be like you must now sign this new AUKUS deal, for instance, right? Which now is going to increase your GDP spend. So this money's got to come from somewhere, and we're already budgeted for because we're taxing people at a certain finite amount now only because we're not increasing any more taxes. So, and to loop it into Owen's point, our sovereignty protection is important to us too.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're giving me two options. One is to either reject the foreign lobbying, which is Donald Trump in this hypothetical, or to make some sort of trade-off, which is to reduce spending on something else. Those are my two options that I unless you see a third one.
There are actually other options. I was watching a fascinating video yesterday, actually, about the wartime or the economy of Germany between the wars. And so it turns out so when they're talking about so that the Reserve Bank there, and people might remember so the Weimar Republic, which existed during that time, people would remember the massive hyperinflation that was going on there. And they were saying in the video, many people regard this hyperinflation as an instance of like, these idiots, don't they know how economics works? But the things they did know, but this was the only option they had left. So the problem was they had to pay the war repayments to the Allies. They also had to pay, I think it was in France, for instance, when France wanted to raise money for its military, it imposed a tax on everybody. Versus in Germany, they issued government bonds. So that after the war, the German government still owed the money to all these people. So that, they had to pay German citizens, they had to pay the allies. And it's like, well, where's all this money supposed to come from? So by inflating away the value of the Deutschmarks, essentially the citizens who bought the government bonds beforehand, they got cheated out of their money. So I guess
it's funny you mentioned that period of Germany right now, because back then, when Adolf and co came in, they had the brown shirts, right, which was like their own paramilitary kind of force that kind of did as they pleased at that point, which is
beyond criticism.
Well, yeah, not just beyond criticism, beyond almost anything at that time, right? Violence and so forth, and draws a little bit of parallels what's going on in America at the moment now, because JD Vance came out and said, these guys, if they're defending themselves, they should be subject to immunity. So anyway, just a little bow drawn there.
I see what you mean, but yet, Jordan, to your point, sorry, the other tools. So this guy, what was his name? Can't remember. His name was. Can't remember how to spell it. Anyway. But so one of the tricks that he used, so yeah, there was the hyperinflation. I think that might have been just before him. But then also one of the tricks was they had all the foreign bonds, people lending the money, I guess, after the war. They initially reneged. They said, we're just not going to pay back these bonds anymore. And it was during the Great Depression. So, these countries weren't spending much anyway. If they were going to cut off the German exports, like, so what? But then they decided, like, let's keep Britain, the Netherlands, and I think France happy. Let's keep repaying those bonds, but we won't repay the Americans because, like the Americans,
they were buying so what's.
They weren't buying many German goods, and also most of Germany's debt was to the US. And so one of the other tricks he did was price controls for goods. So, once, the garments, for instance, were on low supply, that, the sellers weren't allowed to raise the prices. Instead, they would just sell out and not everybody would get clothes. Then also wage controls. And so, like the wage controls and the price caps, they're not taxes, but they do help the government get all this extra money that they can spend on the war machine. So I guess, Jordan, your principle of like no tax increases, I guess, in the most pure sense, you would probably have to extend it to like no impinging on people's liberty, because like, the wage controls, the price controls, they can achieve the same government objectives. But
you've been talking about the war a bit. Do you know something? We've done?
World War III.
But
yeah.
All right. Well, look, you raise a good point, which is that there are more tools. I thought that when you raised the hypothetical before, we were still in the libertarian paradise, which would not include the ability for the government to print money. That's one of the things that libertarians are kind of known for, is end the Fed. Ron Paul coined the term, or sort of wrote a book about it, made the idea famous. So no, I understand that current governments can do that sort of thing. The central bank print money. They can issue bonds and loans and whatnot, and take loans out from other countries. But under my libertarian paradise that we're talking about, they wouldn't have that ability. So no, we would still be restricted to the two options of either supplying some sort of trade-off, something else takes less money, and this the war chest goes up, or the alternative, which I described it earlier.
So is the libertarian paradise like a global paradise, or is it just, are you talking about just in Australia? So okay.
I mean, if other countries choose to adopt a libertarian,
I was just thinking what the concept was when you're saying libertarian paradise, like we've got.
Okay. Oh, because remember with the communists, for instance, weren't they saying that's right, Lenin, I think, was he the one originally saying like it had to be a global phenomenon, versus then I think who was it, like, I think maybe Lenin changed his mind and said no, maybe we can just achieve.
That was Stalin.
Oh, Stalin said it doesn't have to be global.
Communism in one state.
And
then he went and chased Trotsky and gave him the axe pick in Mexico.
Oh, and
a souvenir. It was a going away present. 30 years of long service.
I guess we can agree that communism isn't like one of the things we would like.
Libertarians are fairly opposed to that.
Why?
Well, The thing I
I'll
hate
give you a reason why.
little control.
But have we ever had it? What are you basing it on?
We've seen
Well, that's why I wanted to ask Jordan. Was he talking about it as a complete, across the globe, like everyone's just in this whole libertarian, collective? Because we've never experienced anything like that.
Yeah,
Libertarian collective, that's an interesting turn of phrase. But no, imposing libertarianism is kind of antithetical to libertarianism.
No, again, no, your words. I never said imposing. I don't think we can do fact check. I'm not saying about imposing. If we've got something collective around the world where everyone's operating under the same, policy, if we can use that word.
Or government.
Or government, whatever.
Small government. So, I mean, if other countries or states choose to adopt a small government,
can we call it effective governing? Why do you have an issue with the word effective government as opposed to small government? What's the difference?
Because effective government implies that the government, A, can be effective, and B, that it's got some sort of objective that it needs to manage society. Libertarians don't believe the government is instituted in order to manage your life or the economy. Libertarians believe that the government is there to protect your rights. That's why government was instituted, and that's why we consent to it.
Yeah. So if even just fundamentally picking that and saying, okay, all they're meant to do is have good governance and protect your rights.
Yeah.
Shouldn't that be done effectively, as opposed to allowing individuals to go in there and say, well, I think I know best and I'm going to do it in a way that's efficient only, and we get an outcome that I think I did it the best way possible, but it's
didn't achieve what we wanted.
Yeah. Again, going back to the outcomes or the discussion we had before, if, for instance, the principle doesn't achieve the outcome that you want, then sure, it could be done expeditiously, try and do it efficiently, but was it effective? No, because the rights weren't achieved. So it's got to be looked at. The term effective encompasses a very holistic view of what needs to be done. And sometimes it can't be just done looked through an economic lens. It can't be looked through just through a social conscious lens. It has to be looked through holistic. Even in the forward years, what impact it may have on children, etc. So it has to be done through a very holistic lens to call something effective.
Well, I mean, I guess I don't want to nitpick too much about which term you use, so I guess I don't disagree with the term effective. But the only reason that I sort of grimaced at the idea of using the word effective is that I suspect you mean something different to what I would mean.
I just explained what I meant, but I don't understand what it means to say just having smaller government, because to me, if I need a particular outcome, and again, we don't know what that outcome is, to say I want smaller government, we could have, say, at the moment, let's say Parliament has 120 representatives, and we say, you know what, we're only going to have 10 because we only want them to do certain things, and we get 10 Paulines and Barnabys in there, we're fucked. Right.
Totally.
So what you want are the right candidates to achieve an effective outcome. You don't just want smaller.
Well, here's an interesting quandary for you in terms of libertarianism. So as you just described, we want a smaller government, but I guess what we really want is a smaller government with less power, less abilities to do anything to you, coerce you, that sort of thing. The issue is, if we were to reduce the number of politicians, the politicians that remain would have an increased amount of power. It's a bit of a what's the correct word?
22, you mean?
What's that, sorry?
A catch-22, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So actually one of the things that libertarians want is strangely more politicians, because it would diversify the power. Don't you guys find it kind of strange that, when Australia was founded back in, I think it was 1901, that was the Federation of Australia, I presume our population was, less than 2 million. At the moment, we're at 27 million or 28, but we still got the same amount of politicians, or maybe a few more. I get the sense, or rather it's my intuition, that as the population increases, we should have increased representation size. So it should be sort of one politician per 100,000 people. What do you guys think about that?
I think
Look, I don't necessarily disagree with that. Again, to me, it comes down to what outcomes are we trying to achieve. So Yeah.
But surely there's a right size, isn't there? I mean, Jordan, to your point, so Iran comes to mind, for instance. I think they have like 700 people in their parliament. In parts of Europe, they have huge parliaments as well. I think Australia's parliament should be smaller. I think we already see people who are just a waste of space. And
I think a lot of them are a waste of space, but the New Hampshire Free State Project has gone the other way to solve the problem, whereby they've now got, like hundreds of politicians for that small state, each of them getting paid $1. How much work do you do as a politician when you're getting paid $1 a year?
Well, we had Oscar Yildiz here, who was, about 15 years in the local municipality, mayor a couple of times at least. Right. And we asked him, what is it that you do? And what does the mayor do? And effectively, he said that the mayor manages the meetings. And I said, well, I could do that for free. And effectively, ultimately, all he could tell us was that the mayor's position was coveted because they got paid at least 3 to 4 times more than the regular councillors. So they would all form these little, bodies, whether
like voting blocks,
voting blocks to try and get it, and then they fight amongst each other who would get it each year, because it was like the coveted prize at the end, who would get it every year. But he couldn't actually tell me what their role was that was worth 4 times more, other than, obviously he was not happy that he probably wouldn't get another stint at it because he just couldn't get the numbers ever again.
How is he, if he's going to give that speech to the people, please vote for me for mayor so I get paid 5 times as much as my colleagues. Like that's not a compelling pitch to people. Yeah. I'll run the meetings as well. Like it's not going to win people over. Yeah. I mean,
maybe
I tried to give them a leg up. I was saying, like what if we were going to that's where the buck stops. This person has more accountability, that sort of thing. That's worth more money, not just taking meeting notes. Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah.
But actually, if we can get back to the war point, I think that's also something worth clarifying. So we were saying, there's the free rider problem. People, if we're going to pay for the military in Australia, everybody has to pay. But I guess what sort of military should we be opening up? I mean, recently on the podcast, we've discussed the idea of Japan and Australia being vassal states to the United States. And, to expand on that point, I would say, Germany as well, they've been conditioned in the recent decades. Germany and Japan have absorbed this idea that, we are just a military culture and we can't be trusted in the world. And, that's why they play along with the sanctions. They were, Japan only started having a navy again a few years ago, I think it was. And so as well, in the peace museums in Japan, they're very anti-nuclear. And wouldn't we say worldwide, this whole notion of nobody can have nuclear weapons, it destabilizes the world, it's very unsafe, nobody should have nuclear weapons. Isn't this narrative perfect for those people who already have nuclear weapons? I mean, yes, it would be nice to achieve if nobody had them, but Russia, the US are absolutely not going to give them up. And so in that,
I don't think anyone's advocating that they're going to give them up.
Well, in the paradise scenario, you hear, the Hiroshima Peace Museum, all that stuff. They keep talking about let's get rid of all
because they got blown up.
But either way, if you speak to, I'm sure the Greens voters, for instance, would play along with this view as well. Like nobody should have nukes, and therefore Australia shouldn't have nukes. I'm saying let's be realistic. These guys are not going to give up the nukes, and the only reason this narrative perpetuates that nobody should have nukes is because it's doing the big guys favors. It's not helping Australia. Should Australia have a nuclear bomb? If we're ever going to stop being a US vassal state, if we have to protect ourselves once the US realizes that we're no longer their vassal state, they're going to come and get us. And how do we defend ourselves?
But you started this conversation from the start by saying, that Australia and Japan are,
cut.
Sorry?
We've been cut.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that is it. We are.
Yeah.
So who's going to give us a nuclear weapon when this is what we're set up to do?
Well, some countries got it themselves. Like, the US, obviously, being the first, they developed it themselves. I guess the US gave nuclear technology to other countries. I think China stole it from the US, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, China steals a lot of intellectual property.
Did anyone get the nuke independently?
Just Israel, they got it independently.
Yeah, quite a few countries. I believe India quote unquote got it independently, but the reality is that everybody has seen that it's been achievable, and then all you need is one person from within the nuclear program to move or become friends and swap notes and rah rah rah. So, but yeah, India, Pakistan.
Yeah.
There's plenty of countries that have nuclear.
France, obviously.
Oh, but sorry, that they didn't get it from US technology. They independently
believe so.
developed it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, like, do you agree with this line of thought? Like, if Australia is ever going to stand up for itself, stop being a US vassal state, does that imply that we need a nuke?
I'd say yes, your logic follows. I mean, the premise that you set out is that, first of all, that we don't want to be a quote unquote cuck for the US, something I'd be fine with sort of advancing. I value the military alliance that we have because, I mean, we have the same landmass as the United States and what, 1/10 of the population. We're at 27 million, they're at 330 million. They have the world's largest military by a long shot. People talk about how China's up and coming and China's a threat, and China's not a threat. The US has the biggest air force, being the US Air Force, and it also has the biggest second air force, which is the US Navy. The US military is truly gigantic. The next 11 countries combined only then equal the amount of war capacity that the US has. We're talking China, Russia, and a bunch of other countries that can't even be bothered to remember. Don't all add up to the US. It's massive. And when you've got them as an ally, nobody's attacking Australia.
Well, I mean, if they are really an ally, but then,
I mean, they are an ally in both the political sense, but I understand what you're saying if they are really an ally. But look, Donald Trump is temporary. He's going to come and go, and he can only destroy relations so much. I mean, Australia's Oh, sorry.
This was before Donald Trump.
Yeah,
I mean,
Gough Whitlam was ousted as well.
Exactly. Well, as well.
Who went for a swim and never came back? Was it Gough?
Holty.
It could be.
Holty.
But so like, under Gillard and Rudd, one of them, they wanted to create this mining tax, and then they got replaced as prime minister. And yeah, I heard in the years afterwards that had US involvement, because that they wanted to keep the US. Well, all these people, they think of like Rio Tinto and BHP as Australian companies. Like it's mainly American shareholders. And we see Transurban, for instance, they have this monopoly on roads around Australia. They pay, I think it's like 0 corporate income tax in Australia. All their profits go to America. Like all our resources, all our wealth is being siphoned off to American companies. So that's why I say that the US is not an ally of ours.
That's why I said who's going to give us the nuclear power? We're already
but actually, another option. I agree that nukes are bad because, like, if they're in the wrong hands, they can be used poorly. And we can look back over the past few decades and say, for instance, is the Australia now what the diggers of World War II could have imagined or would have even been willing to fight for? And so,
the flag.
Well, like, I don't necessarily trust future Australians with a nuke, so we shouldn't give them a nuke. An alternative. So I think it was Russia who said this quote, like, would we be prepared to use our nuclear bombs? Well, if Russia was under threat, like, what's the point of a world if it doesn't have Russia in it? And so by that logic, what if we had a self-destructing satellite? And so, Jordan, have you heard of I forget what the phenomenon is called, but like basically one satellite destroys another one and it creates all this like cascading.
Debris.
Yeah, like, it keeps creating more and more debris in sort of an exponential fashion. And so basically you fill up the low orbiting satellites can only operate in this like one particular band, and you can fill that up with debris and make it unusable.
Okay.
What if we had that? That would be similar to a nuclear bomb in terms of it seriously screws over.
So how does the sunlight come through?
Oh no, it's not that bad.
Okay.
Yeah. So it seriously screws over the rest of the world. And so what's the point of the world if Australia can't be part of it?
Right. So our ransom weapon is no longer we're going to kill all your people. It's just that we're going to make everybody incredibly impoverished and destroy a bunch of infrastructure that costs billions of dollars. I mean, at the end of the day, you're just destroying lives. You're doing it a different way.
Oh no, but the thing is, here it would screw over Australia as well.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a terrible option. I'd much prefer the nuclear option then.
Exactly. Yeah, so the idea would be like, we say, if you invade Australia, we'll press the button and nobody can have satellites anymore. Well, I guess low orbit satellites, yeah.
Look, as either an Australian citizen or an elected official, I would be opposed to that problem because I mean, if my threat to the world is if you come to our shores, I'm going to press the button. Well, do you want your president pressing the button that blows up the guy coming to your shores, or do you want the button that blows up your own infrastructure and causes a bunch of damage to your own people, as well as screwing over the other guy?
Well, but the thing is, like, compared to nukes can easily be used just purely offensively.
This conversation's escalated, hasn't it?
Okay. Well, I
I
guess
like it. It's a fun hypothetical.
would Jordan, would you be opposed to nuclear bombs, by the way?
Look, no, I'd have to say in principle, it all comes down. What we're talking about is a self-defense argument. Do you have the right to defend yourself? Right. We can either deal with fists, guns, or nuclear bombs. Apparently, does Australia have the right to defend itself? Absolutely. What's the best tool? Nuclear bomb. You say that you don't trust future generations. Do you trust Russia? I'm betting that your answer is no. And yet Russia hasn't fired a nuke, so far as I'm aware, ever since they've had nuclear weapons. So far as I'm aware, the only people who've dropped nuclear weapons is America. So what you're relying on, or apparently what you're relying on, is trust, but you don't need to rely on trusting future generations. What you need to rely on is incentives. And apparently mutually assured destruction is the incentive that has kept Russia and America in check for the past 60 years. I see no reason why that principle couldn't be expanded to Australia.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, interesting to have someone in charge like ScoMo knows his future employment will be back in the military, or Christopher Payne, or anyone else. They have a mutually assured financial, stake in it.
Yeah.
There's no point blowing the world up if your career after that is in the military again.
That's a good point. Yeah. It's,
so we should never elect 90-year-olds because they haven't got a next career.
There you go.
But actually, Jordan, the game we like to play with all guests, there's a quote game. So the idea, we're going to say a political quote. Peter doesn't know who said the quote either. If you guys want to guess who said it, and if we agree with the quote, how much we agree.
Yeah, sure.
So I'll use Australia because the quote's going to talk about a country, but I guess there's a theoretical possibility that these words aren't what the original person said. There might be a different country. Anyway, okay. Quote unquote. In Australia, we have serious challenges to solve, and we need serious people to solve them. Unfortunately, Tony Abbott is not the least bit interested in fixing anything. He's only interested in two things: making Australians afraid of it and telling them who's to blame for it. We'll clarify. This was indeed a quote about Australia. I didn't change the words at all. Yeah,
it sounds like Albanese.
I think it might be that former Singaporean politician. Am I on the right track?
Sorry, it was indeed Australia. You're thinking of the founder of Singapore.
He once wrote a book on Australia. I think it might be called The Lucky Country.
Oh, okay. But anyway, Peter was right. Peter is half correct.
Oh,
so Albanese did say it, but so did somebody else. These exact words. Oh, well, close enough. Yeah.
Penny Wong.
It was Michael Douglas in the movie The American President. So a few years back, it came out that he plagiarized the movie.
Right.
But this was
So say it again.
In Australia, I guess Michael Douglas obviously doesn't say Australia. In Australia, we have serious challenges to solve, and we need serious people to solve them. Tony Abbott is not the least bit interested in fixing anything. He's only interested in two things: making Australians afraid of it and telling them who's to blame for it. Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like, pretty good scripting to Hollywood. Yeah.
That sounds like what Abbott and co were doing for a while.
Yeah.
Very, very children overboard, very children overboardy.
But I guess, isn't it a shame that, we have such scripted politicians? I mean, I guess you could make the argument they're busy people, but then I guess if you don't have time to write a speech, clearly the speech is unimportant.
Well, look, one thing I find both disgusting and hilarious at the same time is I think it was Anthony Albanese was paying three friends or friendly people as scriptwriters at the same time for a total of some $600,000. He was paying these people $200,000 a year, some mates of his, to be scriptwriters. Now, you'll need to fact check that because I might have got some of the details wrong. But the point is, he was paying some people a lot of money to write his scripts. ChatGPT has been out for 3 years. You could have done that for $20 a month. You don't need to pay somebody else to write a speech for you. You could ask ChatGPT to do it.
Well, it sounds like you're advocating for something effective there, and maybe a little bit efficient, but I'm not sure.
This effective government idea.
But there's definitely something not quite fully with the nuances there with ChatGPT yet. But yeah, I'm not suggesting you needed 3 script writers. But again, I think it goes back to authentic, and how authentic our politicians are. To Owen's point, we've had some people on here as well who who is very much just towing a line and who is willing to have a dialogue. So
yeah. Well, look, on that note, why don't you hit me with a hard question, something about libertarianism. I mean, we've talked a little bit about guns, but give me something hard so that I can really not be accused of being a coward or scripted.
Full disclosure, I don't know if you know, like, I'm not part of any political party or anything, so I don't
Not
really
even
have
the Fusion Party?
No.
No? You said no in like a... No, I would never be a part of the Fusion Party.
Well, I say that as in I don't really know your full politics, and I don't really know his full politics. So I'm just in the chat. So
I get it.
I'm not saying that as a sort of caveat, as in I don't know a lot of the stuff to ask you the hard-hitting question.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, sorry. It's we had a previous libertarian guest. She was writing a dirt. She had everything saved up about everything the Fusion Party's done wrong. She wanted to get at Peter, and then it turns out, what? Peter's not part of the party. All this research for nothing.
We got invited to a New Year's Eve party. It was really fun. It was good.
Look, I did a little bit of research on the Fusion Party last night, and I've done research on the Fusion Party months and months ago. I went looking for the places of agreement. I see that you guys have got free speech as one of your big agenda items, something that I personally have made my own long-term life goal is to get a Bill of Rights and free speech to be in that Bill of Rights, hopefully the first thing. So that's a place of agreement between the Libertarian Party, myself, and the Fusion Party, and hopefully yourself.
So where do you sit on where I discussed earlier about what's happening now with the issue with like the Royal Commission on Anti-Semitism and potentially what could come of that with any relation to freedom of speech?
Well, I mean, I'm 100% in favor of free speech. Like, I would like a carbon copy of the US First Amendment in our own Bill of Rights. In terms of hate speech, I don't buy into it whatsoever. Hate speech would be a subcategory of free speech. I mean, if free speech means anything, it means the ability to tell people that which they do not want to hear. There's a quote for you. Who said that?
Oh, wait, so can you repeat that? Sorry, Jordan?
If free speech means anything, it means the ability to tell those that which they do not want to hear.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. That sounds like something Trump might say. Oh, he's not academic enough.
No, that's a lot of credit.
Yeah. It sounds just like George Washington might have said that.
It was George Orwell, so you're half right.
It's behind him there.
Oh, I can't read that part. Okay, yeah. But yeah, no, George Orwell, very prophetic, yeah. But no, sorry, John, to your point about hard-hitting questions where we disagree, I guess yeah, so I guess I see the libertarians' biggest point of contention with fusion, the fact that we want to treat climate change as an emergency versus I guess like chatting with some of you guys, I've heard libertarians say, like, is climate change, is it a man-made phenomenon? Is it anything to be concerned about? I guess, well, where do you fall on that spectrum?
So the Libertarian Party and a lot of my cohort fall on the other side where they think it is a scam. And I understand why they think that. I probably wouldn't put myself in that category. I try to describe it, especially to my lefty friends, in this way. If we were to put it on a scale of -10 being you think it's an absolute scam and it's not real, to +10 where you're 100% sure that climate change is man-made, it's going to destroy the world by 2050, I would put myself now at a 0. Once upon a time, I was at a 10 when I was coming out of high school at 18 years old. Nowadays, and back in those days, after coming out of high school, I voted Greens in my first election. I'd watched, what was that Al Gore movie, An Inconvenient Truth. I was 100% convinced. Turn the lights off. Wouldn't use AC even in the winter. Rah rah rah. I was militant about it. And then 5 years went by and 10 years by, and it got to now we're at 2026. But I went down to Cottesloe Beach the other day, and the sea level is at the same place it was when I was a teenager. There's more polar bears now than there was 20 years ago. There's a whole bunch of predictions that haven't come true. And so whilst I'm willing to believe and have believed in the climate change narrative, I have developed a level of skepticism. And now why I'm not on the other side where I'm like a -10 and I'm convinced that it's all a scam is because CO2 doesn't taste good. I know that when I start my car, I don't want to suck on the tailpipe, right? And I know that the CO2 extra CO2 in the atmosphere isn't good. And I've got friends who study climate science, and they've explained it to me. And to be honest, I don't grasp all of it, but they've talked about ocean acidification. And my friend studies coral reefs, USO, yeah, and so it doesn't sound good. So I put myself at a 0 in terms of the climate change subject.
Yeah, look, I don't have an issue with what you've described, and look, and I think every action has a reaction. So, if you're going to dump a whole lot of crude oil somewhere, there's going to have a reaction. And I think any individual or group of people, like you said, some of your cohorts who have, let's say, a polarizing view to say, "No, scam, we're fighting against it," is actually contributing to that narrative too, of those who say, it is where the world's going to blow up, in 2050, because you are then part of that narrative. It would be far easier for them to say, "Okay, we concede that it is an issue, but let's now talk about the stuff that we need to do in the short medium to potentially set up the logistics to even deal with what you want." Because if we just want to deal with this issue, which they have us fighting over, and not deal with, say, the class issue that's going on amongst us, where you've got people who live in trailer parks saying, "Go Trump," there's something seriously going wrong with our society. So they have us talking about these, let's say, we'll call environmental issues, which, again, I'm not dismissing that you have causal effects, and where there's an action, there's a reaction, even particularly in the environment. But what I particularly don't want to buy into is the fact that, what the petrochemical industry has done has loaded us up with the conscious to say it is our fault, and we have to be responsible for the cleanup and have this consciousness about the environment, when it's the corporations that are responsible for it, and they've just loaded it back onto us. And again, it's been going on for the last 30, 40, 50 years, right? It has been.
Well, sure.
And recycling and everything, right?
Well, the companies have done it, but, like voters.
No. Stop. Don't conflate it now with another topic. I'm making my point. So I don't disagree with what he's saying, but I also think the individuals in his cohort need to be very conscious that they are contributing to that same discourse by saying we're militantly saying no, or anyone else that says no. So if you are saying, look, we can see through the fog, then you also say, okay, let the baby have its bottle on that, because we need to focus on this issue and these issues.
Well, let me say two things on that. One is about the environment. The other one is I should clarify the party position. So in terms of climate and environment, I like to separate the two. Climate, I'm at a 0. Environment, I'm so concerned about. Rubbish on the ground, it's not mine. I pick it up.
The plastic ocean.
These things are clear and measurable. It's so easy for me to get on board with you. The Libertarian Party regularly turns up to like the Clean Our Beaches events that happen once every couple of months, and we wear our shirts to show, libertarians are concerned about the environment. So environment, climate, I like to distinguish the two. And if you want to encourage me to do anything environmental, it's going to be really easy. Climate, you're going to have to do a bit more work. In terms of the Libertarian Party position, but even though our cohort has said, or there's a large number of our cohort that is on that negative side where they think it's a scam. And the reason they think it's a scam is because the solutions are always the same. Give the state more power, tax the people more. If we tax people more, the weather will be better. So that's why they think it is a scam. But the party position is not that. The Libertarian Party position is that the government should step out of it. As I said before, no taxes, no subsidies. The government shouldn't be trying to, push green energy and green cars, and everyone should buy a Tesla and whatnot, because there's negative trade-offs and costs and whatnot. And it's wrong for us to tax this person over here who doesn't believe in the cause that you're talking about in order to subsidize this person over here who's supporting the cause. That's government picking favors. Now, if you guys are certain about climate change, then the government should get out of your way and allow you to do whatever you can do about it. But you shouldn't use the power of government to force other people who don't believe in it to act in accordance with your will. So that's the party position, is to actually take a position of neutrality.
I see it as a tragedy of the commons, though. And I guess, when you say, for instance, you love the environment, but not necessarily climate, what about the issue of coral bleaching? I mean, that overlaps, doesn't it? Like, is the coral bleaching caused by warmer ocean temperatures and therefore greater acidification?
Sorry to sort of jump in, Jordan, but again, we can all pick on little individual, micro causes, right? And so, what about this one or that one? It's, to me, it's kind of like talking to, sorry to pick on a Brunswick issue here, some gentrified groups of, inner Melbourne who'll say, you know what, I will only drink sustainably grown coffee, because I really want to make sure the people of Nicaragua, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But yet we'll do 2 bags of cocaine every month, because,
Yeah.
because,
I guess,
Cocaine's pretty good.
Yeah. But sorry, I brought this up because I guess it does overlap, but I guess
I take your points, they overlap. And I guess when you are able to point to some sort of tangible effect, then I'm much more inclined to agree with you and get on board. But I would still stand by the party position, even when I agree with you, that the government shouldn't be involved and that the best people who are positioned to solve the problem is individuals like you and me who are now convinced that the coral is bleaching and we know the problem and we're going to fix it as individuals. I do not support the idea that the government should be getting in the way because they'll fuck it up.
Well, I am skeptical. Like, the Australian government doesn't have the best track record on getting things done.
So if I'm a corporation and I want to mine somewhere, should I just be able to do it?
No, because that's shared resources. I think the government needs to be involved in climate action, for instance.
But where does the government not get involved now? So if I'm a corporation and I've discovered reserves of, I don't know, something that...
Yeah, but it's on our land.
Yeah, no. Yeah. So how do we navigate that?
Is this a question for Jordan?
Generally, I'm asking.
I've got an answer.
Yeah.
Private property. Once the property is sold, it's somebody else's, and they can do with it as they please. You and I might not like it.
So now I've gone to, Owen's got some property out in, I don't know, somewhere in the middle of South Australia, northern South Australia, and I'm like, I want to buy that, and I make him an offer, and I get it, and I mine it. So, who determines how I dispose of the waste?
Well, again, that's a private property issue. I mean, if you want to dispose of waste, you can pay someone to take it, or you can manage it yourself, but you don't get to.
I'm just dumping it. So the runoff of the mercury goes anywhere into the table water. Like, who determines what's right or wrong?
Who determines what's right or wrong? Well, I guess when you're imposing a cost on somebody else, the courts will determine who's right and wrong. But I mean, that's the point of private property rights, is that if you're going to dump your water or dump your mercury into the water and it's going to leach onto somebody else's land, there's three microeconomic or libertarian methods to solving this problem. The one that I most prefer is just solidly established private property rights. The other one is pollution permits or a pollution tax. So those are the 3 solutions that I would be looking to if I was elected. Private property rights is the best one, I think. I mean, if you poison somebody else's water, or the water's now left your property, it's on somebody else's property, it seems pretty clear to me.
Or I guess, if you poison the ocean, then I guess that's why you're saying the pollution things would kick it. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, let me give you an example or let me propose a hypothetical way that you could solve the coral bleaching issue. Privatize it. I know that sounds terrible straight on the face of it, but if you sold, a 10-kilometer patch of coral to, private individuals such as yourself for $10 million or whatever price we want to put on it, you then own that. If somebody else destroys your coral, you can take them to court and try to sue for damages.
Sue the rest of the world for polluting.
Well, you're going to have to find somebody specific. Obviously, you can't just sue the world in general. But I mean, it might sound absurd on the face of it, but if you there are instances of this. I mean, that is what Steve Irwin did. I mean, you can find the video of him where he says, I want the cleanest rivers right there, and money, I can't get enough of it. Every dollar someone gives me, I take it and I buy forest. And he bought forest over in Brazil and protected the Amazon rainforest. We can do the same thing with corals.
Well, but I mean, Brazil, like, that country is mismanaged. You see, like,
it's a huge country too.
Well, yeah, but like,
you understand the philosophical point that I'm making to you, the economic argument that if you privatize it, once you own that land, the same way that Steve Irwin did.
Jordan, this is ridiculous. All the carbon credits, it's a load of crap. And so, hang on, Steve Irwin's example. Steve Irwin, well-meaning guy, sure, but like, if he's buying land in the Amazon, Like that's not going to stop them. The Brazilian farmers, they keep cutting, they burn down rainforest to make room for cattle, which is even worse for the global warming. These people, they're not living in like a global civilization. It's, fuck everybody else. It's the tragedy of the commons. And so like when Steve Irwin buys this rainforest, like he thinks, okay, I've saved the rainforest. No, they're just going to go somewhere else now. Cut down that rainforest instead of his. There's plenty more to choose from.
I agree, but that piece of forest is protected. I don't think you're making an argument against Steve Irwin purchasing a piece of property. I think you're making an argument that we need more people to purchase that property.
Well, but I guess as well, like Brazil isn't doing a good enough job of. I guess it would stop if, I guess, the whole Amazon rainforest was privately owned and wasn't fair game for these Brazilians to keep chopping down.
I think the Steve Irwin example, if he did it in Australia and people did it in Australia and it had a material impact, I'd say that's a fair example. To me, the Steve Irwin example almost sounds like my, gentrified cocaine example. Like he did a little thing in a big space, which had an immaterial impact. Because again, you're talking about a massive space, which is almost like half the size of Europe, which they're still cutting down all the forests. So yeah, it kind of looks good on a hashtag, but it just didn't have any impact.
So you're saying that because it wasn't a large enough effect, that the effect is, basically we can hand wave it away and say that it's not.
It's a nice anecdote, but again, I'm saying it's an anecdote, but it hasn't had any real impact. Like I'm saying, if you did it in Australia and then there was a material impact that, we didn't have the koala killer politician in New South Wales and everything else has been chopping down. And there was all the other stuff that went on in Australia. We've managed to, get our forests back and we've got koalas going. Sure, there'll be a material impact. I'm saying it just to sort of tie this conversation around a bit, like that example of Irwin's. It's nothing that to me has an empirical outcome. It's a nice little story, but it is just like someone saying, I support, sustainable people in South America.
Yeah. But I guess many people would label that criticism. Many people would say the whole climate movement in Australia could be put under this bucket.
Oh, it's just for most people.
Yeah, like Australia's emissions of whatever percent. Therefore, why should we?
Yeah, we ship off the responsibility to the other world.
Yeah,
we dig up raw coal and send it off over there, and we say, yeah, we've got our credits.
We need to stop that. Yeah, we need to stop exporting fossil fuels. I think Australia needs to do that. But if we were going to, then we would get invaded. So maybe that's maybe that's a good to wrap it up, shall we? Yeah, sorry.
I've got a book for you. You can read it if you can read that. It's Free Our Markets by Howard Bacher. I would say he's a friend of mine now, but in this book he talks about I think it's the Drainey rainforest. So it's a real world example of where a bunch of citizens like yourselves got together, pooled their money, and they bought and owned a rainforest and didn't use it for anything. They just protected the wildlife there. So I get that you might reject the size and scope of the Steve Irwin example, but this method has been tried and proven to work. And I think that it's the only morally defensible position that you can take in order to foist your beliefs on either the environment or climate change. I don't think that you get to use the power of government in order to assert your belief. I think that if you believe that this is a real problem, the Brazil rainforest needs to not get chopped down, then you should go buy a piece of it and not chop it down. But you don't get to tell Brazil what they get to do with their
no. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that what Steve Irwin did probably wasn't the right thing to be doing. I just was saying that as an empirical example, it probably didn't have a material impact on its own. So I just didn't want this kept going backwards and forwards. But if everyone did that, then the world will be different, as opposed to us lauding these pseudo billionaires and what's going on at the moment.
Well, the president of Brazil would become a billionaire if we had to pay these people not to chop down the rainforest.
Why would the president become a billionaire?
But Brazil, isn't there a lot of corruption there? And I guess Brazil has used the point before, basically, Germany and you eco-friendly countries, you should pay us, and then you can get to dictate what happens to the Amazon rainforest. like pay us or we'll chop it down sort of thing. And I think, you know, these people, they need tariffs against them. They need, because you know, this is the tragedy of the commons. Like, sure, we could pay for it, but like they got it for free.
Who's they?
The Brazilians
Got what for free?
the Amazon rainforest. Anyway, we could disagree all day about this.
Perhaps we might be getting bogged down in
Jordan,
the example.
Okay. Anyway, we'll have to agree to disagree on that. But anyway, Jordan, thanks so much for your time today. And then, yeah, viewers, if you want to check out as well,
It's just Jordan
what's the current
Woodhams,
name for your channel? Is it still Policy Principle?
I'll probably come up as well. Too easy. Thanks both.
Okay, thanks, Jordan.
Later.